Rabbitohs!
G'day guys and welcome back to AdosTheGreat YouTube channel. So guys, in today's video I'm going to be predicting the remainder of the 2024 NRL season. So as you can see, I have 6 tier lists here. We start at the top with the premiers, contenders, teams that I think are 1000% finals bound. There's teams I'm going to drop in that I think that could still make the top 8. And then there's going to be the teams I think we won't see play. We won't see past September, and we'll see them in 2025. And finally, the wooden spooners. So I think we can get the spooners out of the way. Unfortunately, Tigers fans, I do think you guys will grab that spoon for, I think it's the 3rd year in a row, which is crazy. I will say, moving on to next season, Jerome Luai coming, I do think that you guys will be one of the more improved teams next year. But yeah, unfortunately, Tigers fans, I do think you guys will nab that spoon. All right, next up. All right, so the teams that I think are pretty much done for the remainder of the season. Like Newcastle are one of these teams. Now I'm going to go in order. I'm just going to grab them from where they sit in here. Look, Knights, I know they can mathematically make the top 8, and they're actually one of the teams that probably are a bit closer than others. But with that being said, and I know they do have a pretty good draw too, I just can't see it happening, unfortunately. I think the Knights will wither out. I think they were good against Penrith, but they're just so inconsistent that one week they'll look decent, and then the next it's like they fall off a cliff. They can't get their halves pairings right. I think they've got to really sit on it for the rest of this season. Maybe try and work out who is the right guys moving forward for the halves, whether that be Will Price, Jackson Hastings, Tyson Gamble, Phoenix Crossland, or the fella they got from the bloody Panthers, what's his name, Cogger, where, they need to sort that out, I think. And, I do believe their season is pretty much over. So I think that, that's something they probably need to work on a little bit for the remainder of the season. Next up, Parramatta Eels. They're not making, I think it's pretty obvious that they cannot make the 8 now. Bit of improvement, pretty good game last week, but look, I don't see them winning too many more games in 2024. I think they'll sit thereabouts. I think maybe one more win. They might nab one. Obviously, they've got the Tigers late in the year. However, that win over the Warriors has probably saved them from a wooden spoon. I think, look, they'll obviously have Mitchy Moses back next year. They'll be a better team next year, in my opinion. But for now, I think that bottom 4 is looking pretty good for the Parramatta Eels. Next up, and it hurts me to say, but it is my South Sydney Rabbitohs, a team that I had in the top 4. And while we have been riddled with injuries, I do believe that Campbell Graham is arguably our biggest loss for 2024. I know Latrell Mitchell's been out for periods. Cameron Murray's been out for periods. We've had Walker out for periods. Totola's been out pretty much the whole season. There's been several players that have been out, but I believe Campbell Graham was our biggest loss. I really do. And that's over Cameron Murray. I think Campbell Graham was our biggest loss this year. So, look, pretty disappointing year for the Rabbitohs with all that being said. Injuries is one thing, but at the start of the year, there was just no effort. Towards the middle of the season, it's like we clicked into gear and we're like, geez, we could play finals this year. And then again, we've sort of fallen off a cliff again. Again, yes, injuries played a part, but there was also periods where there was just no effort from the team whatsoever. So, Rabbitohs, see you in 2025. All right, next up, the Warriors. Pretty disappointing year as well. Like the Rabbitohs, there has been injuries there. And I guess, not Cameron Ciraldo. Andrew Webster is a second-year coach. So, this happens. Sean Johnson retiring, I don't know if that's going to be a setback or, if that's going to be good for them. I do think there's been a lot of drama with Adam Fanua-Blake and stuff like that. Mitch Barnett's been great this year. But, I think that we will probably see a Warriors side, a very different Warriors side in 2025. They've blooded some young players, which I think is really good for them moving forward. But all in all, pretty disappointing year, and I don't see them making the finals. All right, next up, the Brisbane Broncos, another team that's pretty disappointing, and on paper, I would say they are better than the other four sides. Now, they played a grand final last year against the Penrith Panthers, and now the Gold Coast Titans have pretty much kicked them out of the 2024 competition. So, Broncos fans, pretty much see you in 2025 because I think there's probably a 0.01% chance of you guys making finals now. And, pretty disappointing. All right, next up, we've got teams that I think could slot into the top 8. Now, these teams I don't think are locked in. I've actually only got 7 teams that I think are 1,000% locked in. I think there's a few teams fighting for that 8th spot. I think the first one is pretty obvious. It's St. George Illawarra. They looked incredible last week. Really good win over the Melbourne Storm, who are leading the competition. So moving forward, that's just going to add so much confidence. But again, like the Knights, the Dragons are very inconsistent. I can't lock them into my top 8. There's several teams around them that I do think could finish in that 8th spot as well. So the Dragons, I do think that I think they're probably the best shot at grabbing that 8th spot, but there's several teams that I think could nab it over them as well. One of those teams is the Canberra Raiders. They're another team that are very inconsistent. They made finals last year on one of the worst for and against we have ever seen. Once again, they're in the negatives for for and against, and they're still fighting for that top 8 spot. Jamal Fogarty coming back is a massive inclusion, and moving on to finals, I think that is a very important gain for them. But I do think they will struggle. They're probably the team I least have to make the 8. I think that there's the 3 teams ahead of them that will pretty well get in there over them. One of those teams is the Dolphins. Again, Wayne Bennett's last year, I had them in my top 8 in my predicted ladder this year. I expected the Dolphins to make the 8, and I definitely still think that they can. That loss on the weekend to the Roosters and the one before to the Titans, now those losses will come back to hurt them. And I think, if they nab at least one of those games, they're pretty much locked into the top 8 in my opinion. So those two will really hurt them, especially with how well the Dragons are going. But look, I still think the Dolphins have the firepower to slot into the top 8. All right, and the final team that I think could slot into the top 8, and this one is going to be incredibly difficult. They pretty much need to win every single game. But when you look at the games that they've got to play, I think it's achievable. So that's the Gold Coast Titans, and I really do believe that the Titans could slot into the 8. Now, obviously, results from the Dragons, Raiders, and Dolphins, that they would have to play in the Titans' favour a little bit. But the Titans, they play the Sharkies this week. I think they've got the Roosters, the Knights maybe. They've got St. George Illawarra as well, but they finished the year against the Panthers. Now, I think Melbourne Storm will beat the Broncos in the last round of the year, and then I think that'll clinch them the minor premiership. I think the Panthers will then rest players because I think they play the Saturday of the last round of the year. So I think the Panthers will rest players, and I think that really opens up the Titans' chances. I think the Titans are a damn good chance at making the top 8. I really do. And it sounds crazy to say, but I genuinely believe it. So that'd be my 4 teams that I think could make the 8. If I'm putting them in order of likelihood of happening, I'd say that's probably the most likely. But the Titans, man, they really could give all these teams a run for their money for that top 8 spot. All right, finals bound. So I think out of these 7 teams, I genuinely believe there is only 4 teams that can win the comp. And, you guys are probably going to say you're an idiot for some of these picks, but basically the finals bound teams, I don't think can win the comp. I think on their day, definitely could happen. And if their key players stood up, definitely could happen. But I don't think they're genuine contenders. First team is the Cowboys. They've done well this year, man. They have done really well. I didn't have them in my top 8 this year, and to be where they are now is just incredible. I think the 3 late buys in the comp has really helped them because they did not look like a finals team early on in the year, and they are still one of the worst defensive teams in the comp. I think they're about the 15th best or 14th best defensive team in the comp, but it's their attack that's winning them games. Now, I think that defense will come back to bite them in the finals. As you know, defense wins championships. We've seen it with Penrith. We've seen it with Melbourne. Great attack is good if you can defend. If you can't, if you're not a good defensive team, these other teams will hurt you. And look, I think the Cowboys, I think they will give it a good run for their money, but I can't see them as genuine contenders. Another team I can't see as genuine contenders is the Manly Sea Eagles. Manly are an incredible team when Tom Trbojevic is firing. And Daly Cherry Evans is fantastic as well, but he is getting on in age. With that being said, he's also growing in confidence every single year as well, which is wild to think about. But look, I think Manly definitely could push some of these top 4 sides, but I think that they will inevitably fall off late in the finals. I don't see the Cowboys or Manly making the top 4, and I think they will struggle to beat some of these top 4 sides. All right, next up, I'm actually going to put the Sharks in the finals bound column. I don't think they're genuine contenders, and a big reason behind that is if Nico goes down again, he should be back for finals, but if he gets injured again, there's definitely going to be question marks about it then, because while Cronulla play pretty well without him occasionally, I think they need him there come the big games. I really do. And I know people are going to laugh at me and say he's not a big game player. I disagree. There's definitely been times where he has proven he is a big game player. So look, I think the Sharks probably will finish in the top 4, but I don't actually have them in my top 4 to finish the year. I think there's another team that will jump them, to be fair, and we'll talk about them in a second. But fortunately, I think those 3 teams will be finals bound, but I don't see them as genuine contenders. All right, my first contender, the Sydney Roosters. The Roosters are probably, outside of Panthers and Storm, the best chance at winning the premiership. They've got a lot of players leaving at the end of the year. JWH retiring. Suali'i and Joey Manu will be heading to rugby union. There's Luke Keary retiring as well. There's a lot to play for here for the Roosters. And, I do think that JWH especially, he is putting that team on his back and trying to get them through to a premiership. This is the most eager I think I've ever seen that man look. He wants to finish his career a premiership winner, and I do think that Roosters are genuine contenders this year. God, it hurts me to say that. All right, next up, the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs. This has been an incredible season, and I think Stephen Crichton will go down, especially if they can win or even make a grand final. I think Critter will go down as one of the best centres in the NRL. Just an incredible run for the Bulldogs this year. I think you've really got to give Cameron Ciraldo a massive credit for leading them this far, but also Stephen Crichton. I think Stephen Crichton deserves Captain of the Year, without a doubt. I wouldn't put it past Shane Flanagan winning Coach of the Year, but I think you've got to give Captain to the Year to Stephen Crichton. I think he deserves it. But look, I do think that the Bulldogs, they definitely could make the grand final. Do I think they could beat the Panthers if they made a grand final, or even the Storm? Well, the Roosters are probably not. That forward pack, it's been good. It's done a job for them in the regular season, but against the other top 4 sides that I've got here, I don't think they can they can win it all. I think they can make a grand final. At the big stage, I don't think they can get the job done, but I do think that they are genuine contenders to at least make the grand final and challenge for a premiership. All right, Melbourne Storm are my final team here in the contenders bracket. They just keep doing the damn thing, always thereabouts. Man, they could genuinely win it. They could, and it's crazy that they lose players year after year, and you think they're gonna fall. They're gonna fall, and they never do. I think the Melbourne Storm are genuine contenders this year, and I do think that they could fight for that premiership. All right. To wrap it up, the premiers for me, I am taking the Penrith Panthers. I don't see another team coming close to the Panthers, to be fair. Again, a bit like the Roosters, plenty of players leaving. Jerome Luai is going. James Fisher-Harris is going. You've got Sunil Taruva leaving. There's plenty of players leaving that they're probably going to want to give a last hurrah to try and get that four-peat, and I do think that they are a genuine sniff at that. So I do think that the Penrith Panthers probably get the job done and win the premiership. But yeah, look, that's pretty much it for me, guys. I think the top 8 will be made up of these 7 teams at least. Leaning more towards St. George, but definitely, I generally think either of these 4 sides could make the 8. Yeah, let me know your opinions, guys. Do you agree? Do you disagree with this list? Please hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps the growth of the channel, trying to hit 7,000 subs by the end of the year. Can't do that without you legends and your help. But without further ado, I'm going to head off. And I hope you've enjoyed this one. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks, guys.